Hello, friends, and happy holidays. Uh, I, I think one of the big things that comes with holidays is amazing food, very luxurious, rich food. And so I want to talk a little bit today about what you can do to support your digestion during this time. So you feel lighter, more energetic, you can eat and feel good. You can eat and feel and sleep well, because digestion plays a very big role in all of that. We're not going to talk too much about the connection between digestion and hormones per se. There is, I've written a lot about that in my books. There's always a chapter dedicated to digestion, but so today I just want to focus a little bit more on just you having the comfort and being equipped in a few different tools that you can add to your daily protocol, so that you don't feel bloated, you don't feel constipated, you don't feel gassy, you don't have to like open up your pens under the table, and suffer or excuse yourself, right? And all of that. So, and then for those of you who struggle with digestive issues, you know that then oftentimes it just feels, it also like you don't sleep very well when you have digestive stuff going on. So that's really what I want to talk about today. And if you have your favorite ways of improving digestion, that's something that has really worked well for you, then do share with us, because I always love to hear from you guys as well of what it is. Before we dive in, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support you've given to my friend Lopa, who's the founder of Rasa. Her house burned down on Monday, and I posted about that in our social spheres. I don't think I posted about that on Instagram, but it was our newsletter that went out yesterday as well. We love Rasa because Rasa is a great alternative to coffee. They do have Rasa dirty Rasa, which has some caffeine in it, but the other Rasas all based on really nice adaptogenic herbs that give you a lot of energy, such as, for example, rhodiola. Rhodiola was originally used by Vikings before they went to war. It would just give them like a sense of energy. And so Rasa Bolt, for example, uses rhodiola as a way of giving you like a natural sense of energy rather than the sort of caffeine. Especially I find coffee to be like not the best source of energy, and you have a spike, but then you crash. So anyway, you can go to wearerasa.com. So like we are rasa.com. Jen is going to post the link. All we're asking for is just supporting her business at this really difficult time. There is, sure, she has insurance and all that, but she lost her house. She's also going through the middle of a divorce. So it's a very trying period. And for those of you who've lost a house before, that it comes with a tremendous amount of trauma that needs to be resolved over time. So I want to thank you so much for so many of you have reached out and said that you are supporting Rasa. And so I want to thank you for that. It's just really awesome. Okay, so let's talk about digestion. And somebody's asking about hemorrhoids. We can get to that in a second too. So, the first thing I just want to maybe talk about is just to give you like a very quick journey of what happens with food when we ingest it, so that once you understand the whole journey, then you know why I'm suggesting, for example, checking your hydrochloric acid. So we're going to talk about today, like, how do you check your stomach acid? How do you take digestive enzymes? What about digestive bitters? What about some herbal teas that you can drink before or after a meal to make you feel better, right? So we're going to talk about all of those things. But I want to start off first by just walking you through the digestive system. So as much as we think that digestion starts in the mouth, it's actually, some argue that actually digestion starts with your eyes. Because the minute how many of you here have, like, you looked at something, right, and you already start salivating, or your stomach starts growling, right? And that's it's a really great reminder that the body is already starting to prepare for digestion just as you see the food. So, but physiologically, it more happens when we put the food in the mouth. And the first thing that happens that's really important is to remember the whole thing about like the importance of chewing your food correctly. One of the things I remember being in this meditation center is that we had to chew 100 times before swallowing, and it was part of meditation. For someone who is just like chowing down food, historically, I've always been throwing food down my mouth. That was a really hard thing to do. But the reason why we want to do that and create a kind of habit of really slowing down when you're eating and chewing, you don't have to do it 100 times. If you just do it 25 times, that's already good enough. And the reason why we want to do that is because just as you put the food in your mouth, there's two things that happen. One is the mastication, right? That happens when you start chewing, and your teeth are breaking down the food to prepare it for breaking down even further. The more you chew your food, the more you combine it with your saliva. And the saliva contains an enzyme called amylase. Amylase is there to help you digest carbohydrates. So for example, let's just say you had some sweet potatoes, right? And with some, with some protein, animal protein. So the digestion of your sweet potato or your sandwich, so like the grains, for example, right, already starts in the mouth itself. And that's where the majority of amylase is being excreted. So when you don't chew it up properly, you don't blend it with amylase, then your body is going to have a really hard time extracting all the nutrients out of the carbohydrate that you've just consumed. Then it goes down your esophagus and it goes down to your stomach, right? So the stomach is hugely important next stop, because unlike contrary to popular belief in the Western medicine, you actually need to have a very acidic stomach in order for the body to continue doing the work of digestion. From a pH perspective, the stomach needs to be as acidic of pH 2 between the 2 and 4. So actually, if you put your finger in a stomach, you will get burned, like of a living person, which is, thank God, not quite possible. You will get burned because that's so acidic. And that is there for a purpose. So that stomach acid is what causes the pH to be so low. And stomach acid then is going to continue chomping down the food. This time around is going to go into processing a lot more fats and protein that happens in the stomach. It also, when you have sufficient stomach acid, it also stimulates and it kind of like gives a push to the pancreas to produce further enzymes that are going to be then excreted into your small intestine. And then it goes down, right? So the journey continues of breaking down and extracting the nutrients. And that's important, you guys, because, many of you are spending a lot of money on organic food. You're mindful where you're getting your food from. You change your diet to feel better, right? And you take a lot of supplements. And sometimes it's something so simple as chewing your food correctly and having an optimal stomach acid that really helps you to extract all these nutrients out of that food that you're consuming. And when you're chowing it down, no matter how many supplements you're taking, you're just not absorbing it correctly. So that's one huge thing that can really help just out of the get-go. So the first thing I want to talk about is stomach acid. So let's just maybe start off with that first. So how many here have been told that stomach acid is like you got too much? When you have acid reflux, you've got too much stomach acid, right? And then you're given antacids by your doctor. Problem with that approach is, first of all, let's question that a little bit here, because if you think about it, young people, like teenagers, for example, right, don't have acid reflux. Young people, like in their teens and early 20s, don't have stomach acid. They don't have acid reflux. Why not? Because they have sufficient stomach acid. It's only when we get older, we tend to, like with everything else, everything slows down. You slow down in producing stomach acid. And I know it sounds very counterintuitive because you think like, wait a second, I must have too much stomach acid if it's escaping my stomach and is traveling up and is hurting my esophagus and I feel the burn, right? It makes total sense. But what you need to know is that actually when the stomach acid is insufficient, the connection between the stomach and the esophagus, there is a little sphincter there. then that sphincter gets weaker. And when the stomach acid is low and the stomach acid escapes going up and causing the burn. So actually, when you have an acid reflux is when you have too little stomach acid and not too much of it, right? That's why teenagers don't have they don't have acid reflux because they have sufficient stomach acid. It's older people who tend to have acid reflux because we tend to be low on stomach acid. So how do you know that you have one? Well, first of all, many of you will say here, every time I have like a really nice rich meal with some protein in it, like I'm having a steak, or I just had like this big piece of turkey or chicken, right? And I feel like everything is just sitting in my stomach, like nothing is moving. That's like a 101 of just to discover whether maybe you should start looking in your stomach acid. Your stomach acid is too low. That's the reason why all that fat and protein that's just reached your stomach is not being processed. And so it's taking a lot longer to digest. And that makes you tired. It makes you feel very full. Then the body is not breaking it down correctly. Then a lot of times you start getting gassy, right? It's just not a good feeling. And you end up not sleeping very well because the body's struggling with processing all that food. And I talked about sleep last week on Thursday. So watch the video if you're having trouble sleeping. And having an early dinner, for example, can really make a big difference. But also digesting things correctly can really help a lot. So how do you test? Jen, let's put up a title of how to test for stomach acid. You can get very elaborate and go and actually get a test done in a clinic, but it's very invasive and expensive, and it's not really necessary unless you have some really serious stuff going on. But there's a couple of ways you can actually test it at home. There's the baking soda method, which is not my favorite because it's not the most reliable one. I mean, you might have heard of that one. But rather, I want to tell you more about the method that is actually very effective. I find a lot of people find it to be very correct. And that is basically taking HCl betaine to test it out. How many HCl betaine pills do you need to take before you get a burn in the stomach? So this is what you do. You're going to have like a protein rich meal. So let's just say you just had a piece of chicken, some sweet potatoes, some salad. So make sure you have some really good protein in it. During the meal, you take one HCl betaine pill. And this is like really, we're looking, just any HCl betaine will do. Most of them are standardized. The brand doesn't really matter here. And then wait and see whether within the next 20 minutes to 30 minutes, do you feel any burn or discomfort in your stomach? If you do, that means your stomach acid is spot on. You did not need that pill. Most of us will not have that burn. And so then what you do is the following meal, increase it to 2 HCl betaines, to 2 capsules this time around, and see whether anything happens. And so basically you titrate it up until the point where you start feeling discomfort in your stomach. There was a time in my life when I had H. pylori. I was suspecting that I had it, but I wasn't really sure. And one of the symptoms was that I just felt like the food was always sitting there in my stomach, right? And it's just not moving anywhere. And I was burping a lot, which is another sign of low stomach acid. And then what happened was I had to go as high as 7 HCl betaine pills in order to feel the burn. And that shows you that it could be SIBO, it could be H. pylori. This is when you start considering going and seeing a doctor to find out what's going on. But as we are going into the holiday season, one of the easiest things that you can do is just make sure you take during a meal when you're having especially a lot of protein, you take some HCl betaine and see whether that's going to help you feel better. I personally, whenever I have a big piece of meat, I'll do 1 or 2. 2 is typically too much. I take 1. If I eat a lot of meat, then maybe I'll take a couple of them, and it just helps me to feel so much better. So HCl betaine is going to help you tremendously with digestion of protein. So how many of you here have actually tried doing the HCl betaine method, and what have you found out? So if you find yourself, after the holiday season, you have a little bit more time to focus on yourself and focus on your health. If you're finding that food is sitting in your stomach, you're also seeing food in your poop, right? Like undigested, pieces of carrot, right? Or, seeds. It's very normal, by the way, not to digest corn, so don't judge it based on that. Corn kernels. That's very normal. Beet is always going to give you a red sort of stool. So these things are completely normal. So don't worry about that. It's more of like, greens. You had some kale salad and you see greens in your poop. You see particles of carrots, right? That shouldn't be happening. You're burping a lot. Like I said, it feels like your food is sitting there forever. After having a meal, you start burping, right? You can taste the food in your mouth. Those are all symptoms that it could be due to low stomach acid. So it's definitely worthwhile trying this out. And during the holiday season, especially because there's so many rich foods and there's a lot of protein, definitely the first big things that you can try right at a get-go. All right, let's talk about the next one, and that is digestive enzymes. So that's a lot of times, that's another thing that helps a lot of people really quickly. So digestive enzymes are typically formulated in a way that they've got amylase in that. So remember, amylase is what's going to help you digest carbohydrates. It will have some, it could have some peptides in it, which would be to help you digest protein. It's going to have some lipase in it, which is the enzyme that's going to help you chomp down fats, right? So it's a little bit more holistic. It might be a really good idea to do some digestive enzymes before your meal, or if you're forgetting, then just do it in the middle of a meal, and following the directions on the label. So like, for example, if it says 2, start off with 2 and see how you feel. I have a number of my friends who are specialists when it comes to digestive health, and they highly recommend to do as many as 4 digestive enzymes before a meal. And they have found that it actually reduces your food sensitivity. So I will say that is very true. I've been struggling for a long time with FODMAPs, and so foods that are high in FODMAPs, so things like cauliflower, for example, sweet potato, different kinds of peas are high in those. Beets are high in FODMAPs, and so whenever I have some of those, it would just give me a lot of gas. What I have found is if I do like double the digestive enzymes before a meal with this who's got high FODMAPs, or whatever is your food sensitivity, right, then it's going to help tremendously. Now, I just want to caution you, I mean, don't go to the extent of, doing like a lot of gluten and dairy and then trying with the digestive enzymes. They can only go so far. I see them as more of a support system rather than be taking care of everything, right? So just be mindful of that. So that's another helpful. So we now know about HCl betaine, right? So taking that before you have a protein-rich meal, doing your digestive enzymes potentially before a meal, potentially doubling the dose before a meal can be super helpful. The other thing that, a lot of times people do, like when you take your digestive enzymes, can make a difference in how they work in the body. So if you do your digestive enzymes, like in between meals on an empty stomach, then their function is, rather than helping your digestion, what they do is I see them as little Pac-Man that just go around the body, eating up a lot of the inflammatory cytokines in the body. So people find that when you take digestive enzymes in between meals, it lowers your overall inflammation in the body. So that can be super helpful if you find that you're struggling with inflammation, especially during the holiday season when we drink a lot more alcohol. We do a lot more sugar during this time. We tend to be a little bit more inflamed, right? So then doing digestive enzymes in between meals can be super helpful. Okay, so let's next talk about the next topic I would love to cover is some herbs that can really help with your, in terms of help your digestion. And that can be in a form of digestive teas, or they can be in a form of tinctures. So who here has tried digestive bitters before? That's definitely one of my favorites. I have digestive, in fact, I'll show you We have these digestive bitters in our store. This one is before a meal, this one is after a meal, and they come in these nice little pouch. And the reason why we have this pouch is because I like the idea of putting them in a handbag and then bringing that with me or with you anywhere you go outside. And so it sometimes is a nice ritual to actually put it on the table and share it with everyone. And people go like, wow, it's on, digestive bitters tend to be very bitter, and they have to be bitter in order to start the whole cascade of effects. And I'll tell you about in a second what it is. We formulate it in a way that they are still bitter. So if you're like super sensitive to bitters, you may not like them, but they are mixed with some glycerin in it. So it softens down the edge and it makes them very palatable. And it's kind of nice because they still are bitter, but they just don't make you cringe. Like, part of the reason why I've developed them is because the digestive bitters in the market were just going like you just want to cringe, and it's just so bitter and so strong. On the other hand, the challenge with bitters is that they have to be bitter, because the minute you put a digestive bitter in your mouth, right? So like in our case, you can squirt it. There's like a little knob here and you squirting it. Except this is locked. Between 2 and 4. So the first thing that's happening is that my mouth is now salivating, right? So much. In fact, it's just stimulated so much of saliva, which is like the first thing that tells you that what digestive bitters do is they work on the mouth. So it's like the first step. The first step, is in your mouth. It's like suddenly my saliva, I've got so much more saliva. That also means I have much more amylase available to break down carbohydrates, right? And then what they do is when they go into the stomach, they stimulate the stomach to produce more stomach acid, right? So again, that's super helpful. They also have an affinity for different, for the pancreas. And then what they do is they help the pancreas to also produce the remaining enzymes to break down now also fats and protein. What's also cool about digestive bitters is that they also help to regulate blood sugar levels. So for those of you who are pre-diabetic, diabetic, I highly recommend to do digestive bitters prior to having a meal. And you might notice that your blood sugar levels are much more controlled, especially if you're doing desserts and sweet stuff. So, I mean, historically, it's also really interesting that almost every culture has an element of some kind of a bitterness in their meals, right? Like whether you look at Indian cuisine, you have like chutneys, which tend to be made from like green mango, which is very bitter and sour. Or you have like even, drinks such as Campari in northern Italy, right, has got qualities, is actually made from bitter herbs. And it's not just to, yes, to make you a little bit jolly and happy, but the first objective was to actually prepare your whole body for digesting food, for receiving the food and extracting the most out of it. So digestive bitters can be super helpful, and we sell them in our store on our website. The other thing that's I found really helpful, and it's kind of like very nourishing and really nice to have like a digestive tea after a meal. So who here can think of some digestive herbs that you might have tried that really worked for you? So put that in your comments, and I'll tell you what mine are. So my number one favorite digestive herb is fennel seed. That's my absolute favorite. And I love, for some reason, I don't like licorice, the taste of licorice. Even though fennel is in the same family of the licorice family, I somehow don't mind it at all. In fact, I love it. So there is enough, I don't know, this is just how flavors go, right? Like one person loves something, another person doesn't like it. So somebody's saying on Instagram, I eat dandelion greens and they're wonderful. Mustard sauce, yes, that's all wonderful. That's ginger, absolutely. Ginger is a wonderful supportive digestion. It's also the other wonderful thing about ginger is that ginger also warms up your digestion. So you can have it before a meal, after a meal. And one of the prerequisites of good digestion is when your digestion is warmed up, your stomach is warmed up. One of the things that I find really interesting and kind of bizarre in the American culture is how much of cold drinks are always served before a meal, after a meal. Even on a cold winter day, people do iced coffee, which I don't understand. But one of the things you notice that, for example, in Chinese food history and food habits, culture, is that there's always a soup, right, before a meal. There is always a warm drink, and there's a reason behind it, is because when you warm everything up, it's a lot more open to digesting. When you put something cold, like for example cold smoothies, I really don't like cold smoothies, and I don't recommend them, is because again you're constricting your stomach. You constrict, everything is just contracting in the body because of the cold, and that way you're not getting the best absorption of the nutrients from a smoothie. It's just an example. So what do I think about Schisandra berry? So Schisandra is amazing. Schisandra, in fact, we use Schisandra in our digestive bitters as well. To me, Schisandra is more of an adaptogen. It's a huge herb to give a strength, resilience, helps the immune system, helps to get through a cold. But it definitely has a sour quality to it. In fact, Schisandra is called the five-taste berry in Chinese medicine. So it has an element of bitter, but it's also got a sour. And so sour is also a wonderful flavor to add to improve digestion. So some other herbs that can really help, and you can have it as a little like a digestive without the alcohol after a meal, is definitely peppermint tea. Could be another really nice one as well. You could also do things like dandelion root, burdock root, and there's a lot of digestive teas these days. You are able to find, in health food stores when you go. You remember, like 10 years ago, you walk into a store and there will be like, 6 tea boxes. Now you walk in, there's like 60 tea boxes to choose from. So, and so look for those that support the liver function and also support like digestive aid. So, and typically you'll find there herbs that tend to be on the bitter spectrum. So you will find probably fennel and peppermint, dandelion root, burdock root. You might find some artichoke leaf there as well. That's one of the classical ones, right? And some nice, and typically they will be rounded off. What about dry wine? So no, I mean, alcohol is, unless it's an alcohol that's infused wines, historically wines have been infused with different herbs. What you're looking for is that bitter flavor that's going to create the cascade of effects that I talked about, the stimulation of the saliva being created, stomach acid being produced, enzymes being produced, right? Wine on its own is not going to do that. In fact, yeah. So anyway, so that's, let's see what questions do we have, Jen. And chamomile, yeah, chamomile is a good question. So chamomile can be used as well. Chamomile is just really nice. And, one of the wonderful things about chamomile, and we actually use that in our, we don't use chamomile in our digestive bitters. We use catnip in our, but the reason is the same, is that you digest well when you are in a parasympathetic nervous system space, right? So parasympathetic is when you are like calm. That's why we call it rest and digest state, right? And chamomile can help to just calm everything down, so you digest better. So indirectly, yes, chamomile is also, if you brew it for long enough, it's got some very bitter qualities to it. It's just, if you just like putting a tea bag of chamomile, just go, dip in the hot water and you throw it out. That's not going to be the bitterness we're looking for, but it will give you the parasympathetic support that we're looking for. Mint tea, absolutely, thank you. And so mint tea and vervain tea. Vervain is something that, for those of you who've been to Morocco, there's always mint and vervain that is often served together or separately. They can be very helpful. Milk thistle, yeah. So milk thistle on its own, I mean, that's, I wouldn't use it, but milk thistle is wonderful. In fact, just to share with you, my dad is in the final stages of his life at this point, and he's dying of liver cancer. It actually started off with colon cancer and then metastasized, and so it's really the liver cancer that's gotten him. One of the things that the doctors have given him was sildenafil, and sildenafil is a substance which is the active compound in milk thistle that also helps the liver, but also is also amazing because it helps to grow back the tissues in the liver. Of course, not for stage 4 cancer patient, but it's definitely something that it can help. Samira is saying, yes, I grew up with that in Morocco, best for digestion and stomach aches. Absolutely, yes. And one of the things also I want to give you a little pointer, in case you have some indigestion going on and you've tried all the things we talked about. I really think that all the things, if you do improve your stomach acid, do some digestive enzymes, do some digestive bitters, do a digestive tea, I mean, you really should not have a problem. But one thing, if you're experiencing a stomach ache, or if you're dealing with a child who's got a stomach ache, one of the things, really great hacks, is to lie down, like right after eating, lying down on the left side and letting the food from the stomach go directly, quickly into the large intestine, which is going to be on your left side here. And you just adjust things a lot quicker. And that way, actually, the stomach acid goes away a lot sooner. Okay, do we have any other, does pineapple help digest? Yes, that's a great one. So yes, so bromelain is one of the enzymes that helps to chomp down the food, and so pineapple is full of bromelain. Having it before a meal, it can be really, really helpful. So yes, absolutely, thanks for mentioning that. And a lot of digestive enzymes you want to look for is when they have like a nice combination of enzymes in there. So for example, our digestive enzymes in our store have bromelain in them as well, to help you. But yes, definitely, I oftentimes do a pineapple before a meal. Just even 2-3 slices is, or like not even slices, but like chunks, is good enough for that. So let me just take a quick look at what we have on Instagram here. Something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, well, one other thing that I have found with digestive enzymes and bitters is that when you take them consistently, you can actually reverse food sensitivities, and that can be extremely helpful. Because like sometimes you're sensitive to some food, like I mentioned, like I have problems with FODMAPs, and then when I double the dose of digestive enzymes, then I can have a lot of the foods that before, for example, cauliflower is a really great one. I really love cauliflower. I love the taste of it. There's so many different ways of cooking it, and I was always bummed by it that I couldn't eat it because it was giving me a lot of gas. But now, ever since I started taking double the dose of digestive enzymes, it actually helped me to digest things a lot better. And as you prepare for the holidays, one of the things you can also do is start incorporating more bitter herbs and spices into your diet. And so one of it is, like somebody mentioned about the dandelion leaves. You can make a salad, like if you're making a salad or you're sauteing some vegetables, just add some dandelion leaves into that. It gives the better quality to it and helps with digestion as well. Okay, so I hope this is helpful, you guys, and you try out some of those things in your own, this holiday season, and so that you just feel so much lighter. You're not constipated, you feel energized, you don't feel brought down instead of being brought down by the food, you feel really, energized and elevated by the food. And let it be a source of pleasure for you rather than fear and dismay, just like, oh, I know I shouldn't be eating this, but because I know it's not going to make me feel good, but I can't say no to it. So if you celebrate Christmas, I want to wish you a very, very Merry Christmas. If you are in the midst of Hanukkah, a very, very happy Hanukkah. And I will see you guys. I think we're taking a break next week just to have a little bit of a break, and then we're gonna start again. I think Jen, we said the first week of January, right? We're gonna be back with all of the good information again. And in January, we're going to be talking about detoxing. So, and it doesn't have to be crazy detoxing. It can be nice and gentle. And so that's really what I want to talk about. Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful holiday season.